Hey everybody, Goosebumps for Dummies here, and tonight we are going to be finally touching upon Goosebumps Gold in my series of, what even is the title of the series? I don't even know. Conceptualizing, titling, and plotting these unreleased Goosebumps stories / books. In this case, we have a set of 12 that never came to be, known as, again, Goosebumps Gold. This is a very well-known canceled Goosebumps piece, and over the years we have kind of got some dwindling information about it. More recently, I think it was actually just shy of a year ago now, we got the reveal from Voodoo That's Curly's collection of Goosebumps novelties about the actual blurb for the first book of the series, The Haunted Mask Lives, which I did a whole video on. You can go check that out. I will not be reciting it in this. So, we know as much as that about the book's contents, but we also got the titles for the first three, which everyone knows. In fact, one of them, the third book, the series Slappy New Year, was actually adapted into an actual Goosebumps book for the Goosebumps HorrorLand series, and we will be getting to that when we get to that. This series is just, we really don't have a lot of info on it besides the first two covers, a little glimpse at the third, and the blurb for book one. Outside of that, we only know it was supposed to be 12 books. I can't remember if it was confirmed, but yeah, it is supposed to be a 12-book series. And yeah, that just never happened due to very unknown reasons, but I believe, and it's the biggest theory, that it was just copyright issues with Scholastic owning Goosebumps. Kind of. It was a whole fallout, and it's probably the reason why, after the death of Goosebumps in 2000, with R.L. Stine's contract running out, it didn't come to be. We never got Goosebumps Gold, and that is a shame. I really wish we would at least get, maybe just like with the, I don't know if they were written, but the novella series with Incredible Shrinking Fifth Grader adapting 2D Measures of Shrink. Man, I wish we got something like that, but that didn't happen. Obviously, that'd be hard since the first three were sequels, so you have to reword a lot of titles so they won't get sued. Yeah, so anyways, we're going to give these books some ideas, some fan-made titles of my own, and some stories, and even some covers, and just talk upon Goosebumps Gold in itself about what it could have been. And I guess we should really start with that because we kind of need to do that for a preface of how I'm even deciding these titles and ideas and such. Goosebumps Gold, from the very little information we had, seemed to have been a series of 12 books that would have heavily relied on seasonal theming, as well as sequels, which is like kind of awesome and kind of questionable in a way. I think the sequel thing would have probably gotten old, albeit maybe at the time really cool. And yeah, the first three picks weren't that bad. At the time, Slappy wasn't an overused pile of shit. He only had 5 books, which for Goosebumps wasn't actually too many, even if he was still at the time like the king of sequels, I'd say. And then you have Haunted Mask and Dead House. So just with that in mind, I picked a lot of sequels here that maybe have come later, or I just made up that haven't happened. And there's also books that are original, or books that are also sequels, no matter, that are seasonally tied. I think an obvious one would be, and I did pick, Egg Monsters from Mars and Easter. It's already an Easter book, it's a sequel. If we got one in here, you know what's coming. So, let's just dive right in with the obvious. The Haunted Mask Lives, right? We already know everything we need to know. We can basically just skip this one. We have the cover art, we have the blurb, which I made a whole video on about a year ago. Don't want to repeat it. Yeah, it's really all we needed. It just never came to be. And then we have Happy Holidays from Dead House. This one does not have a blurb, but you have the cover art and the title, so yeah, you can kind of guess what it'd be about. It would be the only, and I repeat, the only other book media to follow up on Dead House, let alone the only other piece of Goosebumps book media to ever be about Dark Falls and Dead House. There's never been a comic adaptation, which I hope there will be. That's something that's on my bucket list, please. Or a sequel. This was what that would have been. Or a Presents adaptation, which would have been killer, because I really liked the episode. There hasn't even been another episode adaptation from the original. So that is the last adaptation of that book, as far as I know, ever, if you don't count some video game stuff. It's crazy. It's really crazy and kind of sad. But no, this would have happened, and this is one of the biggest losses, I'd say, in Goosebumps history, because it would have been probably awesome. But Happy Holidays from Dead House is probably just a Dead House story, but it's Christmas time. and maybe even leading to New Year's, maybe going back to Thanksgiving. Doesn't really matter. It'd just be a holiday season Dead House story. There is a lot of things you can interpret, but since we have no sequels to Dead House, and I'm just going to leave it at that. It is what it is at face value. But then you have Slappy New Year, and that's probably the most intriguing of the three. Not because it's a Slappy sequel, you know, we have 26 of those, 27 pending. Whew. Fuck no. But Slappy New Year was actually further adapted into a HorrorLand story, as I'm showing here. The thing is, though, story here, the main story, not including John the Chiller and the HorrorLand stuff in itself, just Slappy New Year as the story itself, involving Slappy, is not really according to Stine what that would have been. But you know what? I don't think it really even matters, because most Slappy stories are extremely similar. Yes, it could have played out a lot of different ways, and maybe it could have been solely focused on New Year's in a different regard and a party and extremely basic Slappy antics. By the way, this is not a great book. I just think it's the most bog standard Slappy story I'd have to say of fucking series for Slappy. Yeah, I don't really expect much from that book if we ever even got it. And as for the cover, take notes. Literally what I would imagine it would be, just what we got at the end of the day with Brandon's version. Whatever Jacobus would have done, I'm expecting it would have been something similar to this, only in this more, at that time, modern Slappy style that he'd been using for Series Decay. Which I half like, half don't. I think it looks great, except on, I forgot that one piece, Slappy Nightmare. Slappy's Nightmare has an awful cover. For some reason, it just doesn't work there. And that's really all I have to say. Those are the three main ones. Let's go into Spitball, I guess. There's not going to be a lot to say on these either. This is one of the more basic ones, but let's go on to what would have been our January release. And by the way, yes, these were going to come out the first three from October, November to December, which would tie into holiday theming right in the middle of everything, you know, Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas and New Year's. That's where Dead House would come in. Obviously, Haunted Mask in October, no duh, Halloween stories by default, the blurb said so, and then Slappy New Year in December, which could have favored as a January story, but where I think this would have went is a secondary New Year's story. However, Chinese New Year. Yeah, Chinese New Year I think would have been the next one, and no matter what the characters' races were, I just think that would have been the idea. And maybe you could play into that. Maybe it could be some sort of heritage thing. Maybe the, obviously, main characters are Chinese. Or maybe it even takes place in China. That would be crazy. But either way, Chinese New Year would have been like a late January thing, and that year I googled it. So it would have worked. It would have worked. It would come out just before it. And yeah, I think it just, there's a lot of potential, and looking at what the year was, that would have been the year of the snake. So you already know where this is going. I think we could have saw something, or at least cover-wise, this image. I've shown it before for when the snake bites in my Series TK version of this video. But yeah, I think this would have been a Goosebumps story about a snake monster involving maybe heritage or family bloodline stuff with some Chinese characters, which would have been interesting for diversity. And also you could have just made something really interesting with that, unlike Misfortune Cookie from Are You Afraid of the Dark, where it had race characters and just did not interpret him good at all. Yeah, that was a terrible episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark. Moving on to February, I think this is also a no-brainer, and this is going to be another original story. We have Ghoulie and the Beast. Not to reference Beauty and the Beast, but to directly reference Beauty and the Beast. The cover inspiration is pretty simple. Romeo and Juliet from Bone Chillers. I only say this because Jacobus made that easy inspo, right? He could have just basically done the same cover and obviously computerized it, because, you know, for the few Goosebumps Gold covers we know, which also for Frozen Wrench in the Machine, they were digital paint and not an actual painted painting. So that could have caused some issues with how the cover could have looked for some of these, but no matter. But yeah, I think this would just been a, you know, pretty cut and dry Valentine's Day story about two monsters falling in love. I think my personal headcanon for what this could have been, actually this is my fucking title, could have been a science fair Valentine's thing where these two kids make these separate monsters and these monsters have to fall in love. But no, I think that could have just been really funny and be kind of like a Frankenstein kind of thing. It could be really cool. And not much more else to say. Let's just move on to March. Which, March, man. I want to throw it out there, but I only picked this one because this is the only Easter book I can think of for Goosebumps. Egg Monsters Requiem. I know, not being accused of AVP Requiem. Never alien thing with Requiem in the title. I think this could have been a somewhat sequel to Egg Monsters, and honestly, anything could happen with an Egg Monsters sequel. I know why this book didn't get one. I mean, if you were to follow up on what happened at the end of the first one, yeah, you have an interesting bag, and you have a lot of implications you have to follow up on Stine or any ghostwriters who decide to take the wheel. Even if you didn't, there's not a lot you can do to expand the Egg Monsters. We know they're just pretty, pacifist creatures, minus rape, and maybe you could have done something with Dr. Gray. His death was pretty ambiguous. Sorry for the mild spoiler. I don't know, but as a follow-up, which could have just been an separate story without Dana, or could have just had nothing to do with him besides Egg Monsters, or maybe just Dr. Gray. I don't know. You could have done a lot of things, and I think the cover for Egg Monsters Requiem could have been a lot of things as well. Well, my personal headcanon, once again, an Easter egg. Because it's an Easter story. Not even about Easter, just it would be another time-stamped story with Easter as the forefront, just like the original book was. It's also kind of a birthday story. But whatever. Now for April. This is another original story, and this one is actually about Earth Day. Yeah, I know, I'm throwing a curveball in there. You probably weren't expecting that, but this is a direct holiday one once again. Not just seasonal. When we get to seasonal, you can bet it's going to be summer stuff. There's not really any holidays in there besides 4th of July. At least for us Americans. Yeehaw. But no, Earth Day, Goosebumps book, it could have been a pretty cheap but nice little message about being kind to the planet beneath our feet. Pretty simple. This actually would have been a nice follow-up to Egg Monsters General. You could make it about aliens, but what I picked was All Natural Punch. An interesting title. And if anyone remembers, I'm sure none of you watching do, this is actually a personal Goosebumps-esque kids horror story I made. And I decided to just readapt it into this video because I'm like, well, it's basically already an Earth Day title pun thing. All Natural Punch. This is again, fan-made kids horror story. It's nothing tied to Goosebumps. But the plot would have been a mysterious lake legends where it's not actually at a lake, but there's a lake way back in the woods of this new neighborhood a character moves into. And if you cross the stream at a certain point in time, probably late at night, the lake will magically appear, or perchance maybe something will warp in reality, and it'll become pink. And something about the lake is like addictive. It'd be like an allegory for drugs or addiction in general. And there'd be monsters involved and stuff. I think it could be Beast from the East, which is already a pretty natural associated book. So yeah. No, I think this is the lowest hanging fruit I could pick. Is like, I just pull it from my conscience, like, hey, just throw that out there. And the cover could have been, I would think, a Mud Monsters kind of esque cover where everything's pretty much just one color. Instead of them coming out the mud, they're coming out the lake, and be monsters made of the All Natural Punch. Whatever liquid the lake is actually filled with. Some pink, earthy alien goo that makes monsters. Weird stuff. And then for May, now I have to admit something. One thing I did not discuss in the preamble, which was long and thick, I know, but Goosebumps Gold needed an introduction, is... Whew, I am allowed to use titles that not only already exist, which I've already established in these videos in this series, but titles that have been used. Because in the time frame and in the alternate universes that happen, these titles have a chance of not existing. And what I'm referring to is I can use anything I fucking want that came out after Goosebumps Gold, as long as it makes sense, of course. So I decided for May, Preacher Teacher Final Exam, because it's an out-of-school story, or pre-summer, I guess. Yeah, this is one of those seasonal ones. It's getting out of school. So, curveball. I think the cover could have been the same, basically, here, except it's a bit bland, so I'd say maybe just something similar to the first book's cover, maybe an expansion of that. Maybe it's like further back in the classroom, and this kid's like cheating on his test. Something simple. But obviously at the forefront, it'll be Mrs. Mogg. Simple as that. But yeah, no, Creature Teacher Final Exam. I think the plot would have actually been different too. I'm literally just taking the title, by the way. That's it. Not allowed to not take anything else we're saying. For this one, taking just the title. The plot would have not been a camp book. Because yes, this is the Camp Goosebumps story. I think I would have, if I were to write it, I guess, I would have picked something more like, as the title may suggest, an actual exam thing, and maybe you're going to the school where Miss Mark works, or it's another story just featuring Miss Mark, maybe it's a different school. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, I think it's a pretty standard title. It tells you all it's going to be. It's like a big test for fun, looming threat thing. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, I thought it was fun to just rip from a future title, because in this timeline we're assuming we wouldn't be there yet, so technically it was usable. And who knows how long Stine has had those titles. I just love that title. I want to use Creature Teachers. So moving on, we have for June of 2000, 2001, whatever. 2001 this would be, I think, or 2002. Don't matter. For June, we would have had, don't get it confused, One Weekend at HorrorLand. Not to be confused with the Goosebumps Crew associated event that never happened. Apologies. I know, I picked horribly, but it is a great title. Would have been a 4th of July story. Coming out in June, I know, but it's 4th of July. If it came out then, you'd barely have a window to even get the book, because it's the first 4 days in the month. Let alone, 4th of July isn't, a very international holiday. It's really only celebrated here in the States and a few other countries that decide to celebrate our independence. So yeah, I don't really know. It wouldn't have been a huge worldwide thing, but it'd still be holiday no less. And what I really would have liked to see, it's HorrorLand. It's literally the same thing as HorrorLand, except the backdrop theming is that it's 4th of July, and they're staying for a whole weekend. It's in this maybe add on to the HorrorLand universe, pre-HorrorLand 2008 series, which we are ripping from actually here soon. It could have just been a giant theme park, kind of like actually 2008 series that everybody knows about, which happens to have dark secrets. So it could just been a one-off funny, one-off funsy, I guess. Could have been a great book. Who knows what the cover could have been, really. I really don't have many ideas for it, but I would say something similar to, I didn't pull out sadly, but the HorrorLand Survival Guide, and just having fireworks in the background, and obviously change to people in the cart to people, not just slapping a female horror. No, I think it could have been a really cool cover and a really cool story to continue HorrorLand, hopefully in a new direction, not just repeating what they've done 2 books already. Could have been whatever, could have been amazing, don't matter. I'm not here to make great books anyways. You'll see that later. And if I'm correct, we are on our 10th book, so we have Lights, Camera, Doom, and you can hear me holding a book. So I'm going to show you some reference, but beware, it's not Goosebumps. It's Strange Matter, because this is the only other one I could fucking think of off rip besides the adaptation of this from the Haunting Hour. Creature Features. I think the cover art, just getting out of the way, it tells you everything about the story, basically, is this haunted drive-in theater playing a spooky movie. That is exactly what the cover probably would have been. And this is a summary story because it's about a very summary activity. Going to watch a movie at the movie theater, or in this case, the drive-in. At the drive-in. I think this could have been a pretty simple plot and just take the plot of the Strange Matter I just showed, or maybe do something a little different. Maybe the only other one I actually can think of is a Fright Time story and involved aliens. Maybe you could do that. The plot could have been a manifold of things. Just the basic plot is it's a drive-in theater with a dark secret, or something scary going on around it. Maybe the movies are haunted. Maybe they're showing a haunted film. This is a done plot before. I think there was a Creepshow segment about that. I don't know. And now I just know I'm going to piss some people off with this one. Because I'm not very creative. Number 11. This would have been an August release. And also I think it could be a birthday story just to give it some more relevance as a holiday theme, because I feel like there's just not a lot here. Creep from the fucking Deep. and with the same cover and the same plot. Yeah, you could suck my dick. Creep from the Deep could have been a Goosebumps Gold story. Not saying it was, not that there's any actuality to that take. It's just like, it could have been, maybe. Since it was the second Goosebumps book to get released after Series 2K came to a close very abruptly, and give yourself Goosebumps combined. Yeah, you know, this was the closest since Goosebumps Gold, besides Revenge of the Living Dummy, which we already did our HorrorLand one. So, yeah, I think there would have been a Deep Trouble sequel, but it's both a summer thing, or it could have been also a birthday tie. Maybe it's like a birthday trip with Billy Deep once again as a protagonist and his sister Sheena, with Dr. Deep being the adult. It could have been great, and I think it literally just could have been this, straight up. This Creep from the Deep, but it's a Goosebumps Gold book. I think the plot here works fantastically, and obviously, even if you didn't do that, Creep from the Deep, whether you change the title or not, too, maybe you could have just done about the eel itself that we never really got with this book, sadly. Even if what we did get was awesome. Yeah, Creep from the Deep was a great book. I think that was plausible as much as this was. Oh, I know. Oh, I know. Don't scream at me. Don't scream at me. But Weirdo Halloween as the Goosebumps Gold finale. I hear you loading your guns. I hear you flaming your torches. I hear you grabbing your rusted crowbars. But let me explain, right? Again, I don't have to take every aspect. So I'm changing the cover. Duh. No, I'm changing the blurb. I'm changing the story. Anything in these pages is not the same. No BIM. I'm literally just taking the title, if anything. Well, the cover depends. I think, without really much of an idea in mind for this one, Goosebumps Gold could have had a finality returning to Halloween again as a seasonal story. This would have come out in September, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that. No, Weirdo Halloween could have been a completely different plot in Goosebumps Gold. And who knows how long Stine was holding on to the title. And I want to iterate, I think this is a good title. I like the title, Weirdo Halloween. Even if the story behind it is not very good. No, it's dog shit. But no, I think this had a lot of potential as a title, and I think Stine could have just done something very different had it come out in Goosebumps Gold, and obviously something good, without repeating Haunted Mask as, you know, the more notorious Halloween series in Goosebumps, even at the time. And I didn't want to do a Jack Lenz sequel since we just had a bunch of sequels, so why not do just some more original stories again? I'm more of an advocate for the original Goosebumps stuff. I'm glad in more recent years, obviously, since Slap Your World ended, we have not had any sequels. That is about to change, sadly. But, you know, I would have really liked a different story behind this, so I think this would be one of my only opportunities to headcanon that shit into the Goosebumps series. Yahoo! Fucking kill me! Thank you guys for watching this video. Tell me your own lists down below. Maybe your own titles, maybe your own ideas for the titles I've thrown out. Or maybe something different. I don't care. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.